All right, welcome. We're going to take a little trip today to Hobart. I'm going to show you guys a couple little cemeteries in the area. Hobart, Indiana. We got the Old Settler Cemetery, and then there's another one right down the road. So let's get to it and show you what's around there. Old Settler Cemetery. They say there's more people buried here than you see.
These names and death dates, where known, appear on the memorial placed at the Old Settlers Cemetery in 1976. The Old Settlers Cemetery. The mists of time shroud the origins of this small burial ground on South Lake Park Avenue. Yet extant records indicate it is one of the oldest cemeteries in the Hobart area. The history of the cemetery and the stories of some of the families buried there follow the course of Hobart early history and present an interesting and heretofore little-known view of our early settlers. Many of the stories connected with the people buried in the Old Settlers Cemetery are indeed shut up in the dark and silent grave in its research to identify the burials.
Wonder how that happened like that. If there's a break, look how thick it is. I don't know. Tell you, nobody should damage anything around here, that's for sure, man. This place deserves nothing but respect. This is people that were here before us. I mean, come on. They paved the way, right?
The Hobart Historical Society collected information from many sources and prepared this text at the request of the Hobart American Revolution Bicentennial Commission, so that what information is still available might not be lost. The land in northern Indiana was acquired by the United States through the Treaty of Tippecanoe with the Potawatomi Indians in 1832.
My head to break that, right? Look how thick it is. That's crazy thick. It's at least, what is it? Inch and a half, 2 inches thick, 2 inches.
The first individual owner of the land that adjoins the Old Settlers Cemetery was Barney Hoskins, who received title from the government on December 18, 1841. Although the cemetery was surveyed in 1975 and boundaries marked according to records, the site is believed to extend beyond the marked location south to 12th Street. No records or grave markers remain to show who was buried there before 1841. It is believed that the graves must have been for white men, since the government did not usually protect Indian burial grounds by excluding them from land sales. Further, this plot was not the type of terrain Indians used for burial grounds. The earliest burial which could be traced in 1975 was that of Alan Colburn, who died in 1843 or 1848. According to descendants of the Colburn family, Alan and Maria Colburn came to Hobart sometime after 1838 and probably after 1840, since their name is not in the 1840 Lake County census. Zara, who was born in Canada in 1838, was one of the stage coach drivers on the Valparaiso-Hobart Crown Point run when he was about 19. Later, and for many years, he was a barber in Hobart. The Wheeler family, including a married daughter Fanny and her husband Henry Sylvester Smith, and traveled by boat up the lakes to Mackinac, Michigan. There were 9 children in the family, but not all their names are known. An election record for 1853 shows, in addition to Ira, Ariel, George, James G. Cheney, or Chauncey, and Daniel Wheeler as voters. 2 daughters were known: Fanny, Mrs. Henry Sylvester Smith, and Miriam, first wife of John G. Earl. Both Ira Wheeler and his wife Roxy are buried in the Old Settlers Cemetery. 2 Wheeler children are buried in the cemetery, and probably a son and a daughter of George Wheeler and his wife. Henry Sylvester Smith became associated with George Earl. With Earl, he operated the sawmill and sawed the lumber for the grist mill. Smith also built and operated canal boats which used the waterways to provide transportation from Hobart to Chicago. During the Mexican War, Smith served as a scout and guide with General Zachary Taylor and later performed the same services for General Fremont in California. And Smith was in California during the early days of the gold rush. Henry and Fanny and son, George H., is believed to have been the first white child born in the town of Hobart. He was born on January 1, 1852 in the Smith home, which was located on the site of the present United Methodist Church. Fanny Wheeler Smith survived her husband by 43 years and passed away September 17, 1899. Anne Moore Howe was born in England February 3, 1807. She was married in England to George Howe, and their 12 children were all born in England. The family came to the United States, first to Cleveland, Ohio, then to Hobart. M. Howe died October 11, 1859. Her husband died in 1879 and is buried in the Old Hobart Cemetery. There is a tale handed down by early Hobart settlers that when the Pittsburgh, Fort Wayne and Chicago Railroad, the Penn Central, was built through this area in 1854, the workmen disliked disturbing the Indian graves at Liverpool, and 7 Indian remains were reinter equals in LT, read at the Old Settlers Cemetery. No markers remain to show where these graves might be. Civil War veterans and their families around 1859, the Hobart Cemetery was established, and although a few burials took place at the Old Settlers Cemetery, some members of these early families were buried in the Inquat and Cemetery. Mary Banks died shortly after giving birth to a male child, and that long before August 25, 1875, the child also died. In 1865, William Banks sold the land and moved back to LaPorte, where the Banks family had come from.
There we go. Yeah, these are in pretty good shape here. Manley, Alan and Maria. Alan and Maria Colburn. Right. Veteran, 1865, Civil War. God bless you. Thank you for your service.
John Carruthers bought land in Hobart in 1848. After his death in 1864, he left his heirs, his wife, Margaret, a daughter, Elizabeth Stearns, Mrs. Thomas and a grandson, George W. Hendershot. Hendershot was the son of William and Matilda Carruthers Hendershot, who were deceased. Margaret Carruthers died in 1867. In the 1930s, the Old Settlers Cemetery was used for paupers and burials. This aroused protests from older Hobart residents, and the practice was stopped. The burial of Martin Meister is the only specific one which can be traced to this period. Meister was born in Holland in 1865, but had lived in the Hobart, Wheeler area for 50 years, attributed his death to the drinking of soldering acid which he mistook for radiator alcohol. Another story relates that gypsies traveling through the area obtained permission to bury a baby in the cemetery. The name Settlers Cemetery was established in 1976 as being the most descriptive of this burial ground. As is noted earlier, the original deed excluded the cemetery from the land sold to Barney Hoskins in 1841, and current deeds continue to exclude it. However, Alexander Hoskins reserved to himself the quarter acre where the bury equals in ground was located when he sold to Mary Ellis Banks in 1855. It would seem that he did not have this right, since he did not own that ground. Over the years, generations of Hobart citizens have been familiar with the old Settlers Cemetery and have regarded it with a certain fondness, particularly those who, as children, played among the old stones. But time, weather, and vandalism took their toll, and many grave markers disintegrated, were lost, or were destroyed. Although repairs have been made from time to time by neighboring farmers and civic groups, by 1975, only 25 markers, most of them severely deteriorated, remained. These markers are not in their proper locations, but were set up at the north end of the cemetery. The cemetery was surveyed and a decorative iron fence installed along the frontage. Names of those buried there were researched and a memorial plaque placed on the site.
Alright, there you go. Settler Cemetery. Cold as heck out here. Alright, we're gonna go down the road here to another cemetery. So stick with me. And this may be on a second video, so keep your eyes open. Here we go.